We are just 4 weeks away from the first preseason NFL football game, which also means NFL fantasy drafts are right around the corner as well. In this episode, we will be talking about the top 15 fantasy wide receivers for this upcoming 2025 season. So grab a drink, toast to me, and you won't want to miss this. Welcome back to IDP Plus. I am your host, Dr. Derek Bennett, Professor Locks, if you will. And this time we're talking fantasy wide receivers. I got 15 guys plus a few honorable mentions that I want to rank tonight. And we are on the eve, at least, as I'm recording this, I am on the eve of one of my favorite holidays, and that is the 4th of July. So cheers to all of you guys. Grab a cold one, and let's talk NFL wide receivers. There's not a whole lot going on in the NFL right now. Obviously, there's a big trade last week with the Steelers and the Dolphins, and evidently the Steelers thought as an organization that Omar Khan, the con artist, has been doing a pretty damn good job. He just signed a new 3-year deal to continue to be, or a 3-year extension, to be the Steelers GM. But we're not here to talk about the Steelers. We're not here to talk about, all of the hot dogs that I'll be eating tomorrow on the 4th of July as I'm watching Joey Chestnut gobble down, 60, 70 hot dogs. It's absolutely disgusting, but for whatever reason, it's entertaining. But we're here to talk about the NFL. And tonight, like I said, we're talking wide receivers. So how things are going to go tonight. We're doing redraft rankings tonight. I already did Dynasty wide receiver rankings a little bit ago. So if you haven't gotten a chance to check that episode out, go ahead and take a look at that one if you're in a Dynasty league. But for those of you that do your typical redraft style where you and a bunch of buddies or coworkers or family or friends or whoever get together on one special evening, draft your team, and that's your team to start your season. This episode's for you. So with the rankings that I've put together, I've put them together thinking, hey, this is traditional scoring, PPR leagues. How I think the majority of fantasy football leagues are at this point. How the show is going to be structured, we're going to start off with some honorable mentions. I have 3 or 4 of those, and then we're going to start at 15 and work our way all the way down to 1. I have basically the 15 broken up into 3 tiers. They're not completely even tiers. The middle one kind of grabbed a couple of extra guys, so it's not an even 5-5-5 split. But we'll get rolling here with some honorable mentions. So before we, here we go. There's my honorable mentions. So with our honorable mentions, I have guys like T. Higgins, Garrett Wilson, Rashee Rice, and Tyreek Hill. For one reason or another, they didn't crack my top 15. But I think all of them have the potential to have one hell of a season. They're just missing for one reason or another, but they're all basically guys that are wide receiver 2s, potentially wide receiver 1s, depending on how their season goes. But if you're able to get them as a wide receiver 2, and especially if you're able to slide them into your flex, they should be able to give you some pretty good production. So the big one with T. Higgins, he's an amazing wide receiver. The problem with that is you have that Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase connection. And I'm one that is not a huge wide receiver 2 fan when it comes to fantasy. So guys like T. Higgins, Devontae Smith, those guys, I just have a hard time drafting them within the first 15 to 20 wide receivers. There is one duo, if you will, that did crack or both of them cracked the top 15. But T. Higgins is an excellent wide receiver, had 73 catches for 911 yards and 10 touchdowns this past season. He's the second option. Is he a hell of a wide receiver? Yes, but it's been a few years since he's cracked that 1,000 receiving yards mark. Last year, he did see an uptick in touchdowns, which definitely helped his standings when it comes to wide receivers last year. But let's move on to Tyreek Hill, Garrett Wilson, Rashee Rice. So Rashee Rice obviously only played 4 games last year, blew his LCL out, his posterior lateral corner, if you will, in his knee. It was just kind of a devastating situation where Patrick Mahomes was trying to, make a tackle actually after he threw a pick and actually ended up doing some friendly fire with his best wide receiver, his kind of go-to connection outside of Travis Kelce. But the year before his rookie season, Rashee Rice tallied 79 catches for 938 yards and 7 touchdowns. I don't see where that connection doesn't come back. From an injury standpoint, Rashee Rice should be ready to roll week 1. It may take him a couple of weeks to kind of get going. His rookie season, he really came on strong the second half. Just injury-wise, you don't get better at football without playing football. And he missed basically the entire season last year. So hopefully they're able to get him rolling in the preseason a little bit. Andy Reid is definitely not shy at throwing some of his starters out during preseason games. So hopefully they can develop that connection fast and furious when it comes to Rashee Rice and Patrick Mahomes. Garrett Wilson, he's kind of been Mr. Consistency when it comes to production. He had 101 catches last year, 95 the year before, cracked 1,000 yards in both seasons. The touchdowns are they're there, but they're a little bit further than, far than whatever that saying is. He doesn't get that many. He had 7 touchdowns last year, 3 the year before. Part of that was probably due to, Aaron Rodgers going down on play 4 2 years ago. Last year, he was able to bring it up to 7 with Devontae Adams also there in New York. But you're kind of going laterally, I would say, when it comes to a quarterback play at this stage in the game. So obviously Aaron Rodgers is one of the best to ever to lace him up, but he's definitely lost a step, lost a little bit of velocity on that ball. Is not the quarterback that we all kind of remember at this stage in his career. He's, Garrett Wilson now has his old friend Justin Fields, who the two of them developed a pretty good connection when they were at Ohio State. Hopefully they can kind of resurrect that old ties from back in the day. But Garrett Wilson is a guy that is definitely their wide receiver 1. I would not be surprised if, towards the end of the season, he is in the top 15 wide receivers, just because outside of him, they just don't have a lot. You have Alan Lazard, you have who's the other guy that they just brought in? It's not coming to me right now, but Garrett Wilson, I just see the New York Jets being more of a run-heavy team with Justin Fields and Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. I think they're really going to rely on the running game moving forward, especially with a defensive-minded head coach. So that is it in terms of those honorable mentions. Let's get into the top 15 wide receivers. But before I get there, I have to tell you about one of my favorite drafting platforms, and that's with Fast Draft. Fast Draft has kind of changed the game when it comes to best ball style drafting. You have 6 rounds. Each pick only has 20 seconds to pick, and it's best ball. So basically, the top 4 guys that score that week are scored, and that's how the season's going to roll. You don't have to wait around for guys to, take the entire pick clock, if you will. Each pick's only 20 seconds, so you're in and out of the entire draft within 10 minutes. And here at IDB Plus, we're trying to help you out a little bit by giving you $50 with code PlusDGenDoc. So plus DEGENDOC. Deposit $50 and get $50 free for Fast Draft. So what you guys have come to the show looking for, and that's my top 15 2025 fantasy wide receiver rankings. And, when it comes to fantasy wide receivers, this is becoming even probably more popularized, or probably more of a necessity in this NFL than in past years. You could kind of split wide receivers, running backs, kind of go back and forth, but it's such a passing game that if you don't have at least one absolute stud at wide receiver, your season's probably not going to go very well. So you're going to definitely want to grab at least one of these guys, if not a couple of them, if you can. So let's start with 15. And this is my boom or bust tier. So I have 15 to all the way down to 12 in this category. And these are 4 guys that have a lot of boom potential going into the season, but each of them have a couple of things going against them as well. So we have guys like Jackson Smith-Njigba, Devontae Adams, Ladd McConkey, and Terry McLaurin. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of doubling up in wide receiver rooms when it comes to fantasy, but Devontae Adams there with the Rams. Here in a little while, we'll talk about Puka Nacua as well. They are the only duo that cracks my top 15. But let's start with a guy in Jackson Smith-Njigba up there in Seattle. This is a guy that really came on strong last year and became a PPR machine. He had 137 catches for 1,130 yards, 6 touchdowns. The year before that, he had 63 catches for 628 yards and 4 tuds in his rookie year. But at the same time, the Seahawks have made a ton of moves in the offseason, obviously trading away Geno Smith, bringing in Sam Darnold. They traded away DK Metcalf to my Pittsburgh Steelers. They traded Tyler Lockett away. So who's left there in Seattle is Jackson Smith-Njigba. They did bring in Cooper Kupp, which back in the day, he was also a PPR reception machine. But Cooper Kupp has definitely taken a step back over the past couple of years. He's been banged up a little bit, hasn't been able to stay healthy, probably lost a little bit of a step. He's getting up there in age, and Jackson Smith-Njigba is only 23 years old. The Seahawks used the first-round pick on him 2 years ago, and last year he showed that he can be that guy. So Jackson Smith-Njigba, if he can develop a solid connection with Sam Darnold, I think he has a lot of potential to really rise up wide receiver standings this upcoming season. Devontae Adams, like I said, is kind of one of those guys that has moved around over the past few years. He was with the Las Vegas Raiders, then he was with the New York Jets last year for the majority of the season with his old friend Aaron Rodgers. But at the same time, he hasn't dropped in production a whole heck of a lot. Last year, he had 85 catches for over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. The year before that, he had 103. And this past season, he only played 14 games. The year before that, he played in all 17, 103 catches for almost 1,150 yards and 8 touchdowns. Devontae Adams, we know who he is at this point, and he's just a production machine. It'll be interesting to see how Sean McVay incorporates him into that offense with Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams and all of those guys. But I think Devontae Adams is one of the best, if not the best, second best, wide receiver 2 going into this 2025 season. On the other hand, we have Ladd McConkey. He had his rookie season last year, played 16 games, 82 catches for 1,150 yards and 7 tuds. With the LA Chargers, him and Justin Herbert developed a pretty strong connection early and often. and I don't see that necessarily changing. They didn't bring in another wide receiver. They still have Quentin Johnson. They did bring Mike Williams back into the fold. So I guess you add a wide receiver, but at this point, what is Mike Williams? What is his production going to look like? Didn't have a great season last year, but Ladd McConkey is a guy that they like to move around a little bit in that offense, from the slot to outside. The Chargers are going to be a run heavy team, but at the same time, they have to throw the ball to somebody, and that guy's going to be Ladd McConkey. Next, let's finish out this tier with the number 12 ranked wide receiver, and that's Terry McLaurin. Scary Terry, he just plays ball. And, it's been quite a few years since he's missed a game. He's just a solid guy. Has been having some contract disputes, so we'll see how that all shakes out. But he had 82 catches for almost 1,100 yards, 13 touchdowns last year, and it's just one of those things where we have a guy coming into the league last year by the name of Jaden Daniels, and he let the league on absolute fire. And it's one of those things where we've seen a couple of quarterbacks do this over the last couple of years. CJ Stroud the year before. We'll see if Jaden Daniels has that sophomore slump. At the same time, I think Terry McLaurin and what the Commanders have done in the offseason, bringing in some offensive line help, bringing in another wide receiver in Deebo Samuel, who should shift some of that defensive pressure away from Terry McLaurin, who's still a deep threat at age 30. But Terry McLaurin is just a guy that, I think he's got a connection with Jaden Daniels. He's been super consistent over the years, and his touchdown production really made a huge jump this past season once he had an actual quarterback throwing to him. So Terry McLaurin coming in at number 12 wraps up my boom or bust tier. Before we move on to tier number 2 and moving in towards that top 10, let me tell you a little bit about idvplus.com. You're listening to IDV Plus right now. I'm giving you all kinds of information about fantasy wide receivers, but that doesn't mean that's all we're giving out. We're giving you all kinds of information regarding fantasy stuff, betting stuff. We have IDV Plus bets at this point. There's all kinds of great information on the site, so check it all out. Grab a subscription early so that you don't miss out on a single thing this off season. I also need to tell you about Fantasy Football Expo. Yes, the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio is coming up here in August 8th through the 10th. You can get tickets at thefantasyfootballexpo.com. There will be all kinds of content creators there at the Fantasy Expo that you probably watch on YouTube and different reels and TikToks and those kind of things. So why don't you come on out, introduce yourself, meet some of these guys, meet some of us here at IDP Plus. It's a great time. You can join us and other well-known content creators at the NFL Hall of Fame and Village in Canton, Ohio, August 8th through the 10th. So let's move on to the next tier, and this is my Playmakers tier. This is from 11 all the way down to number 5. These are guys that have just been super consistent over the years. These are guys that, I can almost chalk up that they'll finish in the top 10 year after year. And we have a couple of younger guys that made a huge splash in their rookie campaigns as well. But let's start off with the oldest wide receiver on my list, and that's Mike Evans. And Mike Evans is just Mr. 1,000 yards. He got it in his last game this past season. He only played 14 games, though. Was dealing with some hamstring stuff and some other injuries along the way, but he had 74 catches, over 1,000 yards, and 11 touchdowns. He's a touchdown machine, 1,000-yard machine. You can basically just chalk it up year after year. It's one of those things that um, it's just hard to pass on a guy that's just so consistent, whether it's your wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2. You can just expect really, really good production out of Mike Evans. The Bucs have one of the best offenses in the league. They have a group of wide receivers at this point, with Emeka Egbuka joining Mike Evans and crew this offseason. And I think Baker just relies on Mike Evans in the red zone, as well as to find that downfield threat for jump balls all of the time. So Mike Evans, keep him towards the top of your drafting lists. A.J. Brown is another guy that has a good second option in Devontae Adams. But again, he's the Eagles' number 1. Again, a run-heavy team, but their offense is just so productive that I think they can manage to handle a couple of stud wide receivers, the running game, and so forth. So with a guy like with AJ per down, he just has consistent production year after year, and I think it's just one of those things that, like I said, outside of Saquon and Smith, he's still the dude when it comes to wide receivers. So A.J. Brown, again, super consistent, had over 1,000 yards last year, almost 1,500 the year before. And he's just a guy that you can really, really count on. Now, the next few guys, Drake London, Malik Neighbors, and Brian Thomas Jr., are some younger wide receivers that are really coming into the fray nicely. Drake London in Atlanta had 100 catches last year for the first time, over 1,200 receiving yards and 9 touchdowns. The year before that, 69 catches for 905 yards. It'll be interesting to see how Michael Penix continues to develop a relationship with Drake London. But outside of him, you have guys like Darnell Mooney. We'll see what happens at tight end if they end up keeping Kyle Pitts. It sounds like they will at this point. I know there for a while there was some rumors that they were kind of shopping him around. But Drake London is a young wide receiver. He's a big wide receiver that can go up, get jump balls. He's a red zone threat. And now that they have a solid quarterback in Michael Penix, I don't see where Drake London will drop off a lick. Moving on to Malik Neighbors, is that guy in New York. My buddy, the D-Gen Doc Sebastian, absolutely loves Malik Neighbors. He had 109 catches and 1,200 receiving yards in his rookie year, 7 touchdowns. Only played in 15 games. He had a concussion that held him out for a couple of weeks in the middle of the season. But they're in New York. I think the biggest question is, who are they going to roll out at quarterback? Will it be Jackson Dart, the rookie? Will it be Russ? Will it be Jameis Winston? I don't know if it really matters. All of those guys are going to be looking towards Malik Neighbors to gain yards and find him. So Malik Neighbors is the guy in New York. They really don't have another great second option. They still have Slayton. They still have Wan'Dale Robinson. But outside of Malik, there's a pretty big step down. So Malik Neighbors sliding in there at number 8. Brian Thomas Jr. at 7. The question will be, what do they do with Travis Hunter? And I don't necessarily think that I'm breaking any in any records, any news here, but Travis Hunter was slated as the top wide receiver as well as the top corner going into this NFL draft a couple of months ago. So will he be able to play both sides of the ball in the NFL like he did in college? I mean, he's absolutely incredible athlete, can do it. if in my opinion. But at the end of the day, Brian Thomas Jr. is still probably their number one. Travis Hunter should be able to slide that defense away from him, and we'll see with Brian Thomas Jr. what him and Trevor Lawrence end up doing this second season. I don't think his production is going to drop off. If not anything, I think it'll probably increase just because they have another wide receiver threat to take some pressure off of Brian Thomas Jr. Slide that safety off of him every once in a while, so that way him as the deep threat that he is can continue to make some big plays. Nico Collins sliding in at number 6 is a guy that, even though he's not been able to stay on the field for an entire 17 games over the last couple of years, his production hasn't necessarily shown that. He had 68 catches for over 1,000 yards this past season, 80 catches for almost 1,300 yards the season before that. CJ Stroud and him have a great connection. He's kind of his dude. He is their number one. Christian Kirk is in Houston at this point, but Tank Dell, we'll see what his season will end up looking like. He probably won't get a whole lot of playing time coming off of the injury that he had. But Nico Collins is a guy that is a deep threat. They like to slide him into the slot. They like to move him back outside. And I do think that CJ Stroud will go back to kind of his rookie year numbers going into this upcoming season, as long as that offensive line can hold up a little bit better than it did this past season. But Nico Collins is a guy that can really count on to really take a little bit of a leap when it comes to receptions. And I think with that, his receiving yards and touchdowns will probably go up as well. Finally, wrapping out this second tier with our playmakers, we have Amon-Ra St. Brown in Detroit. The biggest question that I have for him is not necessarily him. It's not necessarily Jared Goff. It's, what does this offense look like without Ben Johnson? And, at this point, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is just a reception machine. He had 115 last year, 119 the year before that. He had 1,200 yards last year, 1,500 years in 2023. And his touchdowns have stayed fairly consistent, too, over the last couple of years. He had 12 last year, 10 the year before. So he's a fantasy threat through and through. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown, I flirted moving him up a little bit. He's kind of my guy. I really like Amon-Ra St. Brown just because he is so consistent. Jared Goff is one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league. And, I think for those short yardage passing options, for those kind of middle of the field throws, Amon-Ra St. Brown is that dude. He's a tough dude that plays through a lot of nagging injuries. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, if you are able to grab him in your drafts, please do. Before we get into my final four for wide receiver rankings, I have to tell you a little bit about Bob Lung's Fantasy Football Consistency Guide. Yes, Bob Lung's Fantasy Football Consistency Guide. He's on his 10th annual edition. He's been doing this for quite a while, and fantasy football, we all love those boom type players that put off 25, 30, 35 points week after week. But a lot of it's just consistency throughout your lineup. It really hurts when you have a guy that's projected 20 points that only ends up getting 3 or 4. If we can draft consistent guys, we're looking to have a great year. So get a leg up on your opponents in your league with Bob's 10th annual edition of the Fantasy Football Consistency Guide for 2025. Purchase yours for a measly $15 on Amazon, just like you can with anything else these days. Just search 2025 Fantasy Football Consistency Guide, and you should be able to find Bob Lung's guide there. So without further ado, let's get into the top 4 wide receivers moving into this 2025 season. And it's probably not going to be a huge surprise to most of you, but CeeDee Lamb, Puka Nacua, Justin Jefferson, and my top alpha dog is Jamar Chase with Cincinnati. So my top tier are the alpha dogs. These 4 are going to be probably the stars of your team. Outside of injury, these 4 guys are going to be productive for their teams, for your team. With a guy like CeeDee Lamb, he played 15 games last year, had over 100 yards, almost 1,200 yard or receiving yards, and he only played, I think, 7 of those with Dak, maybe 8. So 7 of those games were with backup quarterbacks, and he still had over 100 catches, 1,200 yards. The year before that, he had an absolute massive season with 135 catches for almost 1,800 yards and 12 touchdowns. So as long as Dak stays healthy, CeeDee Lamb has an absolutely incredible outlook for this upcoming season. I think the biggest thing is health when it comes to Dak as well as CD, because CD is a receptions machine. He basically breaks the bank when it comes to PPR leagues, and he's just got great chemistry with Dak Prescott. Outside of him, we'll see. But as long as Dak is throwing him the football, you'll get very, very good production out of CeeDee Lamb. Puka Nacua in LA, like I said, this is the only duo that I have in my top 15. They brought Devontae Adams, moved on from Cooper Kupp, but Puka only played 11 games this past season, was dealing with a PCL knee injury pretty early on in the season. And PCL injuries are really hard to come back from, especially in the middle of the season. He had 79 catches for 990 yards and 3 touchdowns. But Puka Nacua, Sean McVay likes to move him around and use him in different ways. You'll see him in motion doing jet sweep kind of stuff. They'll put him in the backfield from time to time, but they'll move him into the slot. They'll move him outside. You'll see Puka Nacua all over the field. And I really think that Matthew Stafford just likes going to him. Like I said, he is a PPR machine as well. Had 105 catches for almost 1,500 yards the season before last. And like I said, outside of the injury this past season, I think he would have, gone over that 100 catches mark. Probably had, 6, 8, 10 receiving touchdowns as well. But Puka Nacua is an up-and-coming star in this NFL league that we all know and love. The final 2, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, 1A, 1B kind of a thing. Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase are absolute studs. Let's talk about Justin Jefferson real briefly, because he's got a new quarterback coming into Minnesota. So we got J.J. McCarthy stepping in, and as a guy that lives in Ohio, an Ohio State backer, I hate to think that J.J. McCarthy is going to have a lot of success coming out of that team up north, up in Michigan. But when you have an option like Justin Jefferson and some of the other weapons that he has, I think he's going to. And I think basically in his rookie campaign, although it's his second year in the NFL, I think he's going to try to find Justin Jefferson early and often. Last year, Jefferson had 103 catches for 1,533 yards, 10 touchdowns. The only reason why he doesn't jump up to that number 1 spot is because Jamar Chase had a better year. Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow have the best connection in the league, in my opinion. He played all 17 games, 127 receiving yards, 127 receptions, 17 receiving yards, 1,700 receiving yards. Wow. And 17 touchdowns. He got the Triple Crown this past season. I don't see where his production is going to dip moving into this season, especially now that they found a pretty good back in Chase Brown, it should be able to balance that offense out a little bit. Defenses will have to come up to defend the run a little bit more. And, as long as we have a healthy Jamar Chase, a healthy T. Higgins, a healthy Joe Burrow, this Cincinnati offense is going to put up points, and they did last year. But when T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are on the field, it's hard to beat them, and Jamar Chase just has a little bit better connection with Joe Burrow going all the way back to their LSU days. Jamar Chase he's a dude. And, outside of injuries, he's going to finish, in that top 5 wide receivers. And if you can take him in the top 3 picks, I would take him in a heartbeat. So that wraps up my top 15 fantasy wide receivers moving into this upcoming football season. When it comes to wide receivers, like I said, this is a passing league at this point. There aren't too many teams that are run-heavy teams. You got Philly, which I still think can supply both Smith and A.J. Brown with plenty of production. You'll have teams like, the L.A. Chargers. But outside of Ladd McConkey, who do they have? So I think all 15 of these guys are going to have solid years, outside of injuries and things like that. So if you're able to take these guys in the top couple of rounds, I would highly recommend it. But if you have any questions, any comments, drop those in the chat, drop them in the comments, shoot me a message on X. I'm more than willing to answer any questions that you guys have. If you have any feedback for me, please let me know of anything that you guys are looking for, anything you wish, content-wise that you wish you had. And here at IDP Plus, we're here to please. We're here to help you guys out. Make sure that you finish at the top of your fantasy leagues this upcoming season. So without further ado, I'm Dr. Derek Bennett, Professor Locks. I am signing off.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.